Welcome, friends, guests, and subscribers. Thank you for following the live broadcasts. Our meeting with Denis Yeliseevich is happening now. Denis, I welcome you.
Hello, Alexander.
Friends, please subscribe, like, and comment your thoughts regarding today's broadcast, our conversation, and current events. This is very important. It seems we've entered this spiral of fundamental decisions, important from the point of view of geopolitics and, of course, the situation in Ukraine. In general, the future of the war is being decided, and, it's very interesting without Ukraine, right? That's also interesting. So, we'll be discussing all of this. The QR code you see on the screen gives you the opportunity to support the channel and write whatever you want live, right on the screen. Your questions for the final part of the broadcast are also accepted in the YouTube community and the Closed Viewers Club. Subscribe to Denis Yeliseevich as well, both on Telegram and of course on his YouTube channel. We will also be accepting questions in the live chat, but only at the very end, so make sure to watch the broadcast until the end. And of course we'll start with a poll in the live chat. It goes like this. Let's imagine, look, I can already see it in the live chat. We are live. People are writing, there won't be any elections. That's why the key word is imagine. Imagine that elections have been scheduled, that a specific election date has been set. Would you re-elect Zelensky like that? Well, Zelensky.
Yes.
Are we re-electing him? Options. Definitely, he's our strong one. The next option, there's nowhere else to go. There are simply no competitors. Well, he's kind of the only one left, who could spar with him. He beats everyone, seriously. The next option, I would have re-elected anyone, would have chosen anyone, just not him. And another option, it's all a farce. I wouldn't go to these elections, because we understand how they are, how they're set up, how they're just kicked off. If you imagine that they're just appointed, that's how they'll go. Denis, it's a very interesting and probably key story. Right now they're trying to cover it up with various other stories. We'll touch on Mindic as well. The assassination attempt occurred in Israel, followed by other criminal cases. Then they began releasing National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine employees. Classic. Interesting. But Trump clearly said, I don't think what you have is democracy. Come on, Zelensky, run for re-election. I don't know if anyone will win or not. It doesn't matter. Elections are needed. What do you think? Will Zelensky run and get re-elected? And how would you answer the poll question?
To the poll question, I'd answer anyone. From these, anyone but Zelensky, but really anyone. There just isn't another option. I was just picking from yours. Now, what is the full picture regarding Trump's statements yesterday and Zelensky's reaction afterwards, which was rude as always? So, yesterday he openly went against Trump, first of all. Today, as I can already see in the press, his rhetoric has calmed down a bit. But yesterday he went against Trump. What did Trump mean in his political interview yesterday? He said there is no democracy, elections need to be held, Zelensky will probably run in them. But actually, if Zelensky makes such an attempt, and I'm sure he will, he stated this very confidently yesterday. He'll be removed from the elections immediately by a National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine recording bigger issues or sanctions against his inner circle. They might not directly warn him, even though he's already gotten subtle hints, or they might tell him, if he ignores them, this is what will happen. It can't be any other way. If, as you suggested, we imagine he suddenly decided to go, well, Sesh, that's my decision. Yesterday I saw a poll by those grant eaters, Kyiv Independent. They did it right on topic. All of this is, of course, accidental, in quotes. So Zelensky, 21% of people support him today. Zaluzhny has 19, or 20 for Zelensky, 19 for Zaluzhny. Budanov has 5% and 23% are undecided or support other candidates. That's how I made the breakdown for myself. So 23%, there's hope that they've got something in their heads. But if 20% choose Zelensky, who brought the country to what we're seeing now, and 19% support Zaluzhny without knowing anything about his political orientation, who he even is. Maybe he's a communist, maybe a socialist, maybe a capitalist. Nobody knows anything about him, but he's a confident man, so that's it, that's all they need. Budanov is from a neighboring country run by special services. Is that what you want here? You don't even know his political views or much else about him. You don't know anything about this person at all, except that he suddenly became the head of the main intelligence directorate. That's it. And he gave a bunch of interviews.
You also heard about his wife, that she's with him too.
I just don't touch families. There was an investigation.
No, he has her in his office, so it's not about families, it's specific. Do you remember those?
There were various fish and animals all present. That's it. I don't know how to handle all this. If people are really going to vote for Zelensky, I understand his plan, what he's going to do, but I just can't imagine it. I'm definitely for the elections. You'll probably discuss later how he'll hold them. They've already...
Yes, let's talk about that, because, look, you're right. Today he's very Zelensky. Yes, very measured, balanced. Yes, just like that, yes. Today we're working through 20 points of the plan. You see, he's kind of insisting that it's not 28, but 20, although I emphasize there are 28 points. Russia hasn't rejected a single point. They simply said there are points and questions to address, that's all. So it's not like they're saying, this doesn't suit us. They say there are things that work, there are things that don't. It's a good basis to work from. We haven't heard a single statement saying that we'll agree to this, but not to that. But let's just take the situation and mirror it. They have territories written into their constitution that, in fact, do not belong to the Russian Federation. Kherson, which they left, and so on. So you see, they behave differently. So as analysts, we're just comparing Russia and Ukraine, diplomats, but what do we have here? We're currently working on 20 points. Yeah, we have 3 documents on the table. These are security guarantees. Of course, there's also this issue of rebuilding Ukraine. In general, we're paying a lot of attention to it. There's still not a word about the elections yet, but everyone understood that yesterday Zelensky really got fired up. In general, of course, from the point of view of media professionals, from the point of view of working with the public, it's a very strange situation when on the way from London to Brussels, he grabs his phone, goes into a chat, and starts recording voice messages. Well, that's right. Journalists just answered his question. They downloaded the audio and posted it on their sites. 1, 2, 3. Well, that's their job. They work with information. And that was his second response, that he's ready and waiting. The first one was about security. Trump, can you involve the Europeans and stop the rockets from flying? And the second thing, deputies, come on, organize elections for me during martial law. Oh, wow, that's really interesting. So, martial law and mobilization, because they're always linked together, no one is planning to cancel them. So, a territorial recruitment and social support center employee is the top observer at the polling station. How did he decide to outsmart fate once again? And isn't Trump leading him onto such a minefield?
No, Trump, that's a long conversation, but I want to clarify something. And this audio that appeared, was it posted on his Telegram channel?
No, there's a new specification for working with the press. This is something new for Zelensky. There is a certain chat, well, a group of the president's office, the press service, and there are journalists added there who are accredited in the president's office. And they write to him in text, ding, 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 ding. Like channel 24 is asking, some other channel is asking, well, like a press conference. And he takes and presses, holds down reply in his telegram and records a voice message, apparently on the road or somewhere else.
That's a bad idea nowadays, because someone could use artificial intelligence and spread it as if it's the president's words and cause, well, okay, more on that later. So look, here's the main point. Checklist. Identify main ideas. Remove repetition. Preserve proper names and intent. Condense phrasing. Ensure clarity. People claim Ukraine's surrender is being demanded, but that's not true. What Trump and likely Putin want is Zelensky's personal political surrender. What would that involve? You sign a peace agreement. You lift martial law. Russia doesn't. That is a ceasefire. You schedule elections in 90 days. They elect a new president, a new parliament. After that, in a calm manner, Ukraine enters a period of reformatting during which a referendum is held. The requirement is to withdraw troops from Donbass first. But it's not about recognizing Donbass or Zelensky surrendering it. A referendum is needed, which can't happen under other circumstances. According to the constitution, Zelensky really can't give away any land. That's true. The parliament can't give away any land either. There's a procedure. First, martial law must be lifted, then the parliament has to vote. 226 votes, then a referendum is announced, and it can only be announced and held after at least 60 days. Imagine how long that takes. Now parliament needs 300 votes, not 226. It's a lengthy process. If all goes well, it takes 6 months, but realistically a year, so it's not feasible now, maybe later. So when he tells the press they're asking him to surrender Donbas, that's not true. They're only asking him to stop the war and agree to a ceasefire. You announce elections, and then Ukraine, through its new president and parliament, decides what to do next. That's what the demand is about. Trump talks about elections, gradually starting to pressure him, hinting at what will happen publicly if he doesn't do it now. Of course, Zelensky, who will he be if he starts comparing himself to his opponent in such a crude way? What he did with Putin and how it ended? He records this audio that we're discussing right now and starts. Okay, let's do this now. So, notice, he doesn't say, let's agree on a ceasefire, I'll lift martial law, we'll hold elections, I'll cancel the telethon, I'll let everyone participate. Instead, it's like, right now, Europe and America are preparing laws for me together, we'll do everything right now. And do you know what they're discussing in the team? Yeah, we'll push everything through in parliament, we'll hold the elections in one round. How do you like that? That's it. He decided there are cheaters here, Sasha, and dealing with them is like playing cards with cheaters. With Zelensky and his team, he tells Trump, if you want, I can do it now, but my way. Looking at Trump's biography, especially politically, business is different. Although there too, everyone who acted like that with him ended up badly. And Zelensky didn't just start down this slippery path yesterday, he's just continuing now. Honestly, it seems someone told him to tone down his rhetoric today. Maybe Ihor Valeryovich, since we're talking. At this very moment, Ihor Valeryovich is in the courthouse, in the courtroom.
They finally brought him there.
They brought him. By the way, this is also a link in the chain we're discussing right now. That's why the person just... Wait. Yesterday in the audio, he ended by saying, I will run for office. That's the key. Not just holding elections, but declaring he'll run.
But he doesn't say it like that there. He says, I'm ready, I'll go. That's what he means, I'll go for it.
In the end, it's clear. Let people listen to it again. He says, I will, which upset me. If only he hadn't said that. I'm going. Wait. You said, I'll only serve one term, one cadence. Then you said, if I can't handle it, someone else should come. Recently, you told all the Western journalists, I'm not clinging to power. I'm ready to leave and give up my position, even tomorrow. They put a lot of pressure on Yermak. Until the heavy artillery got involved, Yermak wasn't planning to leave. Although there were signals from the United States over the past year and a half. I know this for sure. This year, there were at least 3 signals. Get rid of Yermak. You waited until what happened now, and he's still on the same path. So people need to understand, this is absolute deception and how ruthlessly he clings to power by any means. It's simply unbelievable. That's all I see. I'm shocked that society has allowed this person to act this way. The Ukrainian people shouldn't let a president behave like this. Then it begins. Nothing will change here, so I should stay quiet. It's not my business. Let those fools like Yeliseevich, Shelest, or others under sanctions talk. Let them do their thing while we stay quiet here. That's the result. You can't stay silent. You can't stay silent.
Well, you mentioned Kolomoisky. Yes, indeed, they say the housekeeper was injured. On November 28th, there was an attempt on Mindich's life, can you imagine? And so you just watch all of this happening. Well, of course, there's the court, he was brought in. The main thing is that the judge doesn't get sick, as the deputies joke. Yes, 5 minutes before the hearing itself. But I have a question. Was the attempt on Mindich really what they were so afraid of that they didn't come out for 2 days? Or do they just not care? Honestly, just don't care. What did he even want? What does Kolomoisky say? It's important how Zelensky and his office react. Even the police vans are breaking down.
Yeah, I think they don't care. I think it's completely... You see, Sash, right now we shouldn't... The viewers, we shouldn't be considering... We shouldn't consider Zelensky as a president who's in a difficult position and trying to choose the right path and lead Ukraine somewhere. I look at his actions absolutely from the first to the last. This is purely a gang that steals, that holds on to power, and their opponents are simply those who get in their way, not those who are against Ukraine as they claim. Just today, before our broadcast, someone sent me this. Zelensky talked to the head of the Foreign Intelligence Service, Ivashchenko. So there are individuals who work for Russia, who spread misinformation and mislead Ukrainian society. We will block them. We will fight against them. Wait, hold on. You're at it again? Looking for enemies somewhere while you're the one recording audio in the age of artificial intelligence? Well, I mean, I just look at all of this. I'm still surprised. He'd likely pick a security official to lead the office now, but no one has been chosen since nobody wants the job. I doubt Budanov or any security officials want to get involved and risk ending up on the American sanctions list. He's a washed-up pilot, and no one wants to work with him in a top role now. They know what they'll have to deal with. They prefer to stay in their positions, in the system they control. The Americans aren't interfering there at the moment. He found a new one, Ivashchenko. I also read from Dubinsky that Ivashchenko is covering for Yermak. He basically has an office here now and walks the halls with security. Zerkalo Nedeli reports he planned or was planning to create cover there to leave Ukraine. Wait. The Foreign Intelligence Service should be fighting directly since we're at war with Russia, but they're serving Yermak, who's targeting political opponents and settling scores. Is he planning to block and destroy all opposition before running for elections?
Yes.
From afar. Then you have no choice. I'm the only golden one. That's how it is.
Yes, that's why it's in our poll vote, friends. Because apparently Zelensky is exactly like that. How does it work here? Use any crisis as an opportunity? There are a lot of info gypsies there now. They've appeared and successes about making it in time and all that. Well, you get it, right? What we're talking about? All those marathons and stuff. Let's do it. The Marathon of Desires. Like, he went to the Marathon of Desires. Apparently he wants, let's say, to twist himself around. About Kolomoisky, listen, it doesn't matter. Well, I mean, did he want to say something about Mindich on Monday, or... Well, actually, not about Mindich, but he showed how he manipulates the system. Well, just like a spinning top in one place, it's just unbelievable. Either the judges get sick or the police vans break down. What do you think? Will he play any role for Zelensky in this pre-election period? Or will they shut him up and not let him?
They won't shut him up. They won't shut him up. As I already said, Igor Valerievich is just one link in a very long chain today, just like Umarov. They found themselves in a life situation, faced with a choice they had to make. They made it, because that's how it has always been, historically, in such situations. In the end, everyone saves themselves. Even the Italian mafia turned each other in, Giuliani, because moments like this happen in life, and this is far from the Italian mafia in terms of their code, so these people will all turn each other in too. Igor Valerievich today, well, probably, either he and I are on the same side, I think. Well, I definitely am. Because it's time to bring out the heavy artillery, it's time to start working seriously against Zelensky. This is the moment every dictator faces. When does a dictator's real downfall start? He crushes everyone, silence falls, a few speak, then the breaking point comes. For example, with Yermak, more people should speak up. You can't silence everyone now, but I think this is happening there, but look at our opposition. I don't see any real action, especially political. There's little opposition to Zelensky and no calls for elections. His deputies were literally posting yesterday, yes, you can hold a presidential election, but you can't hold a parliamentary one under martial law. Everyone agrees. Sternenko writes, no elections during the war until the end. What kind of elections? Rus arrest, donations, crypto, Range Rovers. Are you serious about ending the war and holding elections? And what do we see in the end? The deputies are for their own pockets. Sternenko and his group are for their own pockets. The deep state, they're all for themselves. Ukraine is a cash cow. Let's milk everything out of it. If you suggest a plan for Ukraine's development or elections and call for democracy, you're labeled an enemy or Russian agent.
You say that you didn't choose the head of the office, but that's also amazing from his, how do you call it? Audio, right? He says, listen, I could just get used to working without a head of the office. Maybe we should just disband this, forgive me, Lord, President's office altogether, and what would happen? Nothing would happen. Why bother? I'm the president. I don't need an office. Can you imagine? Well, I kind of keep my distance, of course, not that I really keep my distance. People discuss this topic, how close Yermak is to Zelensky both spiritually and physically, that he can't even imagine anyone else. He says, no, I've chosen the candidates, but what if they suddenly take them away from there, from wherever they are, Fedorov, Budanov, and then their work will fall apart. Well, you can't do that. There will be a hole there. Let me do it instead. And all of this is presented as some kind of self-sacrifice, just like with these elections. Yes, Trump's response. I can clearly see politically and technologically he's trying to pull off Operation Oval Office 2. Back then, his ratings shot up. Because here he is, our guy, small but with such a big heart for Ukraine. I remember how they wrote about it. Today, all sorts of people like Liza Bogutskaya and various deputies are spreading this around too. Let's support Zelensky. Let's remember what you were like on February 24, 2022. Remember, let's all unite together. That's the calculation and that's the tactic. So, will Zelensky be left without an office?
Actually, I'm a supporter. Disband the president's office and either privatize this administration or turn it into a symbolic museum. We need to eliminate it. About his comment that he might not need an office, I think that's just a basic anti-crisis tactic. To show the negativity was there and holding me back, basically to shift and dispose of it onto Yermak and the office. All the bad things were there, but I was your golden boy then and I still am. These statements make me laugh, like if Budanov or Fedorov left their positions now. There's no one to replace them. Do you know why there's no one to replace them? Because you run things based on who's yours and who's not, instead of choosing someone who's a professional and can actually do something for Ukraine right now. Well, maybe he doesn't really like me or my field, but that's not the case here. There are people who have basically signed in blood with me. We'll work with them, but the rest, why bother? That's how it is. You know, Ukraine seems full of fools, but there are many who could outperform everyone, even Zelensky, thousands. Ukraine has many talented entrepreneurs, but people need encouragement. We have just 5 or 6 effective managers. The rest, it's a country of fools. Honestly, it disgusts me. And these people who, according to polls, 20% support him. Well, honestly, I don't really believe that, but let's say, I think in reality, it won't be more than 10%. 20% or 10%? What are you even thinking with? Do you even see what's happening? If this is not bad for you, then what is bad for you? I just want to ask, will it only be bad for you when a nuclear strike happens, or what would be bad for you?
This is worse than a nuclear strike. At this trial of Kolomoisky, the judges recused themselves. They will continue later.
Did you write it down?
Yes, that means the judges are already sensing something too. This is, of course, absolute vulgarity. Well, anyway, they just turned around and left. Tomorrow, let's do it until tomorrow. It's not just one judge. All the judges recuse themselves and tell us to return tomorrow. So, Thursday the 11th, another court session. Everyone can already see that something is going wrong. But there's another important point here. You say you're always against the idea of some military people coming in or something like that, even for some transitional period. These scenarios are being considered, but it's impossible without the military. You see, it's just impossible without the military. The snuffbox option won't work in this case. The option, well, they're all tied together. We can see that. Well, I mean, you saw how mockingly Zelensky responded to Trump. Like, the people of Ukraine will decide. Do you represent the people of Ukraine? No? Get lost, Donald Fedorovich. So, well, you see, Trump won't solve these problems for us here. That's the problem. There's no organizing force to gather a Maidan. Everyone is scared and afraid. The loud ones there. Well, like Skorokhod, for example, right? She was basically taken down specifically. Now, there's no one who would, well, her reputation is just, I don't even know what would need to be done to fix Skorokod's reputation in any way politically right now. They even posted bail there, or maybe they didn't, but it seems like they did it quickly, within an hour, 3 million. Well, try to collect 3 million like that in an hour. That's official, clean, white money. And then all these videos and clips. And it'll be the same with everyone. It's like a warning. Look, if anyone opens their mouth, we'll immediately put a file into the case. We'll put together some video with you from 3 months ago and shame you in front of the whole country. They can do it, and they will do it. So it turns out that no one except the military represents any force that could counterbalance Zelensky.
So, I can tell you, Skorokhod was not brought down by Zelensky's forces. Skorokhod always votes in unison with what's... She goes on air, says she's in opposition, criticizes in the chamber, but votes the way the Zelensky regime needs. Yeah, I'm not saying whether she's guilty or not. I'm not a law enforcement officer and I won't judge. But the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine is working there. And they're really the ones bringing her down, not the president's office. Why Zelensky? I said he went against Trump with that statement about the elections because today, Trump doesn't have, if the elections were held tomorrow in 60 or 90 days, Trump doesn't have a candidate with a really high rating here and now. It would take a year to achieve that. And Zelensky understands this. They will try to bring him down, but then he'll be digging his own grave. Sasha, when we talk, you just mentioned the judges. About recusal, I've already said this on your show before. In America, there's the Magnitsky Act, where they added Russians who were involved in restricting human rights, violating human rights, censorship, and all that. A Brazilian judge is already on that list. Ukrainian judges, prosecutors, and others who act this way will join them. That's why the judges already know and are just trying to protect themselves. The power vertical, so to speak, is no longer as rigid as it used to be. That's a very good sign. That's why they can't take down that many people at once. Otherwise, they'll be removed. As I said, Zelensky won't be able to run for office. Ukraine is literally approaching the final step toward major changes, but more is needed from society. This desire for change, not just the desire for another new charming guy to whom we shift responsibility, while we step aside and start criticizing him a year later. And everything else. Vote for ideas, not for charming guys or whoever else they're selling you.
But everyone has the same ideas. Everyone is for all the good things and against all the bad things. You see what I mean?
Yes, you're right. Those on the political stage now, that's true.
Well, people didn't vote for Zelensky because he's handsome. And he had two things going for him. The first was that he wasn't from the system, so he would bring something good. And the second, everyone listened to his programs, Gordon's speeches before the election, before the announcement. He represented peace, friendship, reason, kindness, and what is eternal. But how did it go? Now, what am I supposed to do?
Yes, I agree. People chose this. I won't oppress Russian. The war must end. Ukraine will be like Switzerland. All this is true, but since he's not from the system, people voted. And I voted for Zelensky, not because with Poroshenko, there's a sense of doom. But with Zelensky or anyone else, there's at least some hope. That's the principle. Most people voted against Poroshenko. Zelensky is a product of the system. He never worked in the market and served the oligarchs on intertelevision. That's not the market, just cash and offshore accounts. At the time, there were absurd amounts of oligarchs' money. At that time, when Inter was in a leading position, it was the same with Ihor Valerievich. Every week, every quarter, it was a purely scripted political show about who needed to be taken down, who to pressure, who to hint at. It was all big politics. Imagine if back then Yanukovych decided to sanction Zelensky along with Kashev. No one even considered that. Not even Yanukovych dared challenge the Soros supporters. There, Naim was rude to him during a press conference with Leshchenko and all that. He just completely lost it. And it's like they boiled society like frogs, slowly. And people didn't notice when they were cooked. You can't do that in just one day. He was making gradual progress. First a television marathon, then exile. Criminal cases for one, sanctions for another, and then target families. Yesterday, my mom had another court hearing for reposting my video, that very one. Still, Sasha, it's been a year, more than a year now. The security service of Ukraine broke into my mom's house at 5 a.m., by the way. It was November 28th, if I'm not mistaken. November 28th, 24th year. And on November 28th of this year, at the same time, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine also broke into Yermak's place. That's the irony of fate. A year later, possibly on November 28th or 26 years, someone else might get raided or end up on an American list. They won't escape punishment. Things have gone too far. Here's what I want to say. They don't understand this. Do you think Yermak, a week before he was kicked out, was sitting there thinking, well, I'm going to lose. Maybe I'm going to lose. No, he thought, we'll crush everyone now, and Trump can't control me. We'll force people to submit, jail some, and kill others. I'm the best. That's how they think. And Zelensky is the same. Nobody can, but Yermak thought that way. What I don't like is something else. Yermak was kicked out, and there's such silence. No, let's keep going with the story. Where is he? What is he doing?
But there's no press.
No press, of course.
That's the function. Look, that's the function of the press.
Of course, I agree.
Well, if everyone treats it very scornfully or, with disgust, yeah, they treat the yellow press, those moments when they catch, photograph paparazzi, celebrities, all that. That's a whole separate topic. But this topic, it's also an element. It's also an important element. Some people call it sensationalism. Yes, sensationalism. Yes, sensational headlines that don't correspond to anything. Yes, but at least we understand. Is he in Ukraine or not in Ukraine? In that little house where they build those family houses or not, or maybe in some other place, did he choose the wallpaper or not? And what color is the toilet, for example? This has also become very important in recent geopolitics. I suggest, Yermak, of course, that's very interesting, but we don't know anything, so there's nothing to discuss. Can you imagine? It's so convenient. That's it. Yermak is lost. It's like we lost the guy. He won't call anymore, so what's left to discuss? There's nothing, and the press remains silent.
But I'm concerned about the connection with the Foreign Intelligence Service. That's serious.
But they're all our own peoples. Well, wait, what kind of connection is there? They're all our own.
Zelensky mentions the Foreign Intelligence Service head today, showing he hasn't reached any conclusions. He only relies on force to control this country.
Well, that's exactly how it is. Well, in his position, you see, in his position, just to assess it here, who supports him, right? Zelensky, Scholz, Macron. To say that they really support him strongly, well, let's be honest, maybe in words, but in actions, well, they support him, but not to the extent that even now various analysts are still thinking about it. And if the United States really leaves, I mean completely, no intelligence, nothing. Just like that, everyone got alarmed. They submitted it to Congress. Like, let's have the United States leave NATO. Well, why not? The Soviet Union is gone. All those relationships that existed at the beginning or in the middle of the last century are gone. You see, why do we need NATO? Why should we feed them all, protect them, spend money? We can protect ourselves, let them handle it on their own if they want, or do it differently, but we don't need NATO at all. Well, the same thing could happen with Ukraine. They could just cut everything off. And they're already counting 70%, 80%. Like, if Europe really tries hard, they might be able to provide for Ukraine. But those numbers are just theoretical. But in reality, we'll see advances along the front line. We'll see deaths, suffering there, cities being captured, frantic evacuations, people going nowhere. They were just surveyed recently. I don't know if you saw it or not. Kramatorsk, yes, Kramatorsk. And there are old men and young women, but almost no one of middle age left anymore.
Yes.
So they all say, no, here we are, let them all leave, both sides, the military, let it all just end. The general mood, they waited longer than anyone. They know the front is only 15 to 20 kilometers away, maybe less. Now, with the drones flying around the center, some people say, please, let's just stop, that's it, and we can finally breathe, because this whole thing is coming our way. But Zelensky doesn't let us breathe. You understand? The point of my question is, let's discuss this together. Why does Russia... A pause? Okay, how about elections instead? Why replace Zelensky? Many people are analyzing now, saying, look, Russia is staying silent. They only comment on these points. They're in dialogue. But why would they let Zelensky hold elections? Especially since we can see that they will be more like a farce, like a show.
Look, Sasha, this is what I already told you today. And neither Russia nor the United States will let Zelensky hold elections the way he plans to. That's why I say Trump first and foremost. The whole Trump family knows who Zelensky is. They've simply talked to him, they talk to him. Because by fate, he happens to be at the center of important geopolitical events today, including where the United States has interests. What's the calculation? Zelensky's political capitulation. If, for example, we held elections in the spring, got a new president and parliament, lifted censorship, ended violence, and withdrew troops from Donbass, then the country would simply return to how things were before. That's it. We start from scratch. We have a roadmap, this plan is a roadmap. After all that, you left Donbass, and now you have to legally recognize something there, and now it needs to be fixed in the constitution. And this is the kind of work that takes a year. A referendum is unavoidable here, you know? Without it, nothing changes. If you insist on staying in Donbass, the war will go on. Putin's and Trump's demands are coordinated in this case. Zelensky is not a player in this situation, but he's trying to hold on. I get it. Zelensky seems to help Putin. Who else has hurt Ukraine as much as Zelensky? I agree. But globally, there are demands, including about the Russian language, and you see his stance on NATO already. Sash, they heavily criticized me for supporting neutrality all these years.
Yes.
I support NATO, but they won't accept us. I also support neutrality like Austria. People are repressed and called Kremlin agents. Yesterday, Zelensky said, we're not joining NATO, so let's drop it. It turns out freaking great.
He says we're realists.
You're realists, you hear? After 4 years, he became a realist, then presidential after 6. Well, now let's model the situation. First of all, you mentioned street polls. If there were no dictatorship now and you asked every Ukrainian honestly, do you want the war to end? 90% would say yes. 10% are the privileged, those making money, those somehow involved, or complete idiots. Let's imagine a situation. The United States withdraws. First of all, the United States will not leave NATO. It's all a political game, I'm telling you for sure. So, if America withdraws, we lose intelligence. Even limited support means losing intelligence. Trump refuses to sell NATO weapons for Ukraine.
I'm not reacting to your comments. We'll continue. Zelensky's statement just arrived, so please proceed.
Got it. Europe doesn't have money. That's one. Europe doesn't have the weapons. Europe doesn't have patriots, no missiles. Europe doesn't have ammunition. Europe doesn't have anything at all. Yes, you can make an effort and fund the war for 1 more year, but in a year, Putin will take even more. We'll look back and dream about today when the condition might be to withdraw entirely from Zaporizhia, Kherson, Odessa, Kharkiv, or even Dnipro. In a year, that could be the question. I'm serious. 500,000 are leaving their units without permission, and no one wants to fight. These little polls, the internet and all that, that's all well and good, but 500,000 men are leaving their units without permission, and millions are sitting at home, hiding in their holes, not wanting to join the army.
No, Dennis, not 500,000. You're exaggerating again. You're doing it again.
Officially, it's 300,000.
No, it's a secret.
Someone said it's officially 300,000.
Starting today, the Prosecutor General of Ukraine has classified information about those who left their unit without permission due to criminal cases. Some daring guys did it 2, 3, even 5 times over there. So they classified this number. Why? Just so that...
In the Soviet Union, there's no sex and no deserters. Classified. No. Did they reveal Ukrainian deaths? 30,000 in 4 years.
Yes.
As Zelensky said.
So now that's the story with those who left their unit without permission, and these people who left their unit without permission are doing whatever they want on the street. One remark about, well, whatever they want. I mean... He came back after leaving his unit without permission, had a fight with his wife, and threw 2 grenades. Like in Odessa, yes, recently. Or, for example, there was some shooting on the street, and some representative of the Jewish community in Odessa was killed with 4 shots to the head. Right now, yes, the same thing, yes, who what? Someone who deserted their unit, that's quite a story. That means weapons, including in the hands of criminals and so on. Who are you? A deserter, that's it, right? Look, I wanted to make one remark. This is a fundamentally difficult situation in terms of the referendum. I partly understand why professional Ukrainians don't discuss this topic at all. First of all, the very word referendum has been discredited since 2014. Some say Moscow discredited it. The point is the people who went out and marched. Look, a referendum, yes, that's great. It's kind of the highest form. I mean, we've had referendums in Ukraine, right? The parliament just, well, took it into account as advisory and that's it. And they don't make any decisions. So it's like there's a decision from the people, but no one puts it into action. This happened in the history of Ukraine. It could have happened in 2014 with those referendums in Luhansk and Donetsk, especially since people always... How was it there? We proclaim these republics, but I emphasize, and this is important, as for joining Russia, that came later, after the armed conflict happened, and even then, during the referendum, no one was really aiming to join Russia. Everyone wanted to be a bit separate, so that in the aftermath of Maidan, they could somehow trade with Russia and keep connections, because they saw that everything would be cut off. This was the will of the people. The problem with Ukraine right now is that, let's say, hypothetically, let's try to model the situation. For example, let's say Kramatorsk holds a referendum, right? Now, of course, the polls there show us that everyone is for Ukraine, and everyone has Ukraine in their hearts and so on. But many have already left Kramatorsk. Some went here, some there, some could, some couldn't. Many of those who stayed, obviously, what does a frontline city do when everything stops? They serve the army. Some work at service stations, others in stores, and so on. That's how the economy of frontline cities works.
Yes?
And that's why they can't say anything else. A Ukrainian won't be able to choose where he wants to go, to Russia or to Ukraine, because even asking this question is a crime. But you can't do without it. You can't. Remember, back in the previous windows of peaceful settlement, there was this idea. Let's hold a new referendum in Azov. Well, a new one.
Yes.
Only with the United Nations, so everything would be fair. But no one asks the Ukrainians. That's the problem, you see? Well, and the second thing is what you mentioned earlier, that they say, oh, no one asks, and that's good, so I'll just keep quiet.
When you mention Kramatorsk now, excuse me, what question do you mean for this referendum? How will it be worded?
Well, do you agree to join the Russian Federation or to remain in Ukraine?
Well, the question will be formulated. It will be a nationwide referendum with the question, do you agree to the loss? Well, it will be formulated differently there. The point is whether you agree to leave Donbass, not to recognize it as Russian, nothing, that we are leaving the territory of Donbass. That's how the question will sound. Russia conducts its own referendums like in Crimea and Donbass under gun threats. I admit that without force, the outcome could have been different, perhaps a different percentage, but it was done under threat. Yes, we didn't have a referendum, but we should have held a referendum on the European Union, on NATO, on the language, instead of Poroshenko just carrying around the constitution.
They're too afraid to ask the people, even on sensitive issues. Everyone assumes people are fools and sees no reason to consult them. That's the problem.
Of course, that's exactly how they see them, as cattle. That's why Ukraine has never lived a single day under a full democracy. And those people who are now rambling and discussing things there, they've never lived a single day in democracy in their lives. Do you understand how the question will be asked? If everything goes the way Trump wants, and then a referendum is held with a new president, a new parliament, and with Ukraine already rebooted, or rather in the process of rebooting, then there will be... The referendum has been held. How should I put this? It's not in the context we're discussing or the one you asked about, because this is a question of how to phrase it correctly. If people vote no, let's do it this way, let's model it. This nationwide referendum takes place about leaving Donbass or not, legally, officially, and people vote no. That means the continuation of the war, that's a new war. We all understand that.
Yes.
A roadmap has been agreed with Putin. We hold a referendum and that's it. But if the referendum says no, there will be another war. And what if everyone votes yes?
And what if we ask the people of Donbass directly? Look, Russians always use the referendum in Crimea as an example for themselves. Yes, those percentages are extremely high, but they still cite them. So now Kramatorsk, polls, journalists went there, just take a look. Well, hypothetically, let's hold a referendum, but honestly, right, Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, and the local people, the residents who are there without any military presence, specifically those registered there, well, hypothetically, right, they'll say, we don't want to be part of Russia, so what then? And Putin will say, guys, well, it doesn't make sense to spend several more months on fighting thousands of lives, this grinding war. The people of Kramatorsk, and this won't even occur to the Ukrainian authorities as an option, well, as an element of negotiations with the Americans, for example. Why was I smirking? We're live on air. So, Zelensky makes a statement. This week could bring news for all of us and for ending the bloodshed. Ah, that's powerful. But no one is offering anything. There are no results. Well, let's work with the Americans on this. For example, this story or another story. There's no creativity. There's only one thing. Give us money, power, resources. Oh, you want elections. Give us, you want something else. Give us. In other words, Zelensky is pursuing a completely different policy. That's the problem. Politics.
They can't ask the question again, do you want to live in Ukraine or Russia?
Yes, well, look, that's a normal question. I'm not saying to do it by the law. Well, you get it, right? So, when Zelensky needed it, he put those volunteers at the local election ballot boxes. Do you remember the 5 questions? Like referendum questions?
Yeah.
Well, then he could have just shown it. Putin, he could have said, look, only 20, 15, maybe 30% want to join you. And 70%, for example, specifically those people, the ones you're now going to war against, they don't want it, you see? And then it would look different from the point of view of, well, international relations. But as it is, we have no arguments. We only have arguments. They put out Sersky, who says, I spend the night with the soldiers. We value every life. But the military people there, well, those who are familiar, who know, who are fighting, they spit because they know that Sersky wouldn't have been called a butcher in Bakhmut for nothing.
Well, of course. You see, for me, it's a nightmare to even discuss a referendum where Ukrainian citizens would be asked, do you want to live in Ukraine or in Russia? Another opportunity was missed. As you said, there's no creativity. And in fact, in 4 years, there hasn't been a single proposal from Zelensky. I said, we should have been making proposals. We withdraw from Donbass, and the entire Donbass becomes an autonomous region or a federation. You could have taken that approach to Trump, proposed it as a solution, and kept discussing it with Putin. That would be painful for many, but that's the proposal, and that's the reality that could happen or could have happened. Instead of that, I'm telling you, fine, they gave us another year. Then what? Will Russia fall apart? It won't. I recommend it to all. Translation is online. There was a forum recently in Doha, Qatar. Donald Trump Jr. spoke and said, this idea of let's keep fighting, Russia will go bankrupt. That's not an approach. That's not a plan. America will no longer be an idiot with a checkbook. But that's what we've gotten used to. Well, not you and me, but many of our fellow citizens and Zelensky. They just want everyone around to give them everything. They don't want to generate anything inside or really live somehow. Many people go out. I was shocked by a clip from Gordon's interview with Yeliseevich, Savik Schuster's producer, where he claims, this war is forever. Why is it suddenly forever? Who said that? Show me who said that. So are we just telling people, you're here to die, there will be no happiness? This is war. This isn't a country, just a buffer zone. That's how Europeans talk about us behind closed doors, off camera. Well, what's happening is just terrible.
An important point. So you were talking about foreign intelligence like that. Before that, remember, there was a meeting with Budanov where he also, well, as I understand it, for similar reasons. In short, Zelensky needs something he needs to present, something for the domestic audience, and something obviously that might change some of the dynamics, maybe in regional politics or geopolitics, I don't know. So, well, something, how should I put it? Outwardly, yes, something outwardly. Look, today there was some strange message from the main intelligence directorate. So, can you imagine those sneaky Transnistrians? I say sneaky not because I actually think they are, but that's just how it sounds in the message. So they're mobilizing, gathering, forming a sabotage and reconnaissance group. Basically, they're up to something over there. Can you imagine? Usually, things like this are said and announced. There are actually 2 trends now. I wanted us to discuss this one and the attacks on China. They're smaller, but still trends. Let's begin with Pridnestrovye, hypothetically. We recall it was discussed long ago, and even Western media reported options like making a deal with Sandu and aiding Moldova in resolving the Transnistria issue with Ukrainian military support. Well, there are ties to Romania there, so Romania, of course, is also something else. They took the kobza from Ukraine. Well, the kobza is a musical instrument. They say it's theirs. The pandora, the kobza, it's theirs. Just like with borscht, now we'll be dividing it with the Russians. They say it's theirs, and we say it's ours. Same with the kobza. So, About Transnistria and the history of Transnistria. Look, we've already been to Kursk, now we need to go to Transnistria. If hypothetically Zelensky pulls off some kind of special operation like that to confuse things, create smoke and chaos, what do you think? How will the international community react? Partners and non-partners, the United States of America.
The United States remains a partner for now, but I wish they were allies. The Europeans won't be thrilled about this idea, I think, although I'm not sure anymore. Because if on one side of the scale there's the end of the war, and on the other there's a need to disrupt it, to disrupt peace, at least in this way, but this is very risky because the territory of the European Union is nearby. It's a very risky situation. As for America, as soon as they get intelligence about even such intentions, even heavier artillery will immediately come into play. Do you understand? I'm not just convinced. I know that no one will let Zelensky go. No one will let him do whatever he wants, like it was 2 years ago or even just a year ago. That's why any of those so-called creative ideas and thoughts he has, there will be a reaction from President Trump, and a very tough reaction. And as I already told you about Kolomoisky, there's a huge chain at work here, so I don't see anything real in this. I'm convinced this won't happen. This may be an information operation meant to mess with people's heads and so on. It looks more like that to me. Why? Because I know for sure that there are very serious negotiations going on right now involving Kushner and Witkoff. This happens daily, and none of those factors are being considered. Time is limited, but it's not announced. Things happen and change there, but no one plans to let this mess last for months like now. A decision will come in December.
Before Christmas on the Western calendar, right?
In theory, yes. That's right.
I think this announcement that I read, which came during the broadcast, it seems to me, maybe I'm wrong, these news this week which are coming are a direct response, well, already a cultural one, to Trump, who asked Zelensky basically to make a decision in order to give an answer by the 25th so that a Christmas truce could be organized starting from Christmas. But how will they sell this Christmas truce, and will they be able to? And who needs to be pressured more in general? Well, for example, the Russian side or the Ukrainian side. And will Zelensky agree to this?
Actually, he's not planning to go along with it. Well, as I already said, in theory, they'll pressure him because I see, they'll pressure him. That's all part of the same plan too. I mean, why the truce? Well, after the truce, they could easily lift martial law and call for elections. The key point is still the elections. The country needs a reset. Putin has, as we've already discussed, 3 major things. NATO, well, he has kind of already acknowledged it. There's the Russian language, there's religion. We haven't talked about the Zaporizhzhia gas station yet, which is also important in current negotiations. So right now, everything publicly is about Donbass, whether to leave or not. Zelensky is manipulating, saying we need to give up Donbass. We shouldn't give up Donbass. I've already told you why. We just need to leave this country alone and let it continue making democratic decisions. And you know what's the most important thing here? Back to Kolomoisky. This all connects here and is important. How did it happen? In my case, open a criminal case against Yeliseevich's mother. Break the police van for Kolomoisky. As another could take Ihor Valeriovich to court. Hello, judge, get sick or something, it's always the same. Either for Kolomoisky or whoever needs it. Tell me, if this happens with Donbass and Crimea, we've taken back Donbass and Crimea. The president's office still calls and gives judges instructions. What's the difference with or without Donbass or Crimea? What I'm getting at is that what's important is how the country will live from now on. Without Donbass and without Crimea, life can be 10 times better than with them. If the country changes, and only the economy and an honest court can save the country. The Washington Post wrote it correctly, quoting Yutkov and Kushner. That's what I've been saying all along. Where there is trade, there is no war. People don't fight there. Ukraine and its people should focus on trading, providing services, and caring for their families, not arguing over language or religion. These storytellers should stop talking about endless war. We should focus on finding real solutions to move forward. If the president's office tells everyone what to do, that's not a country or a state governed by law. It's a banana republic. How are we different from Russia then?
You understand, with this kind of logic and those kinds of phone calls you described, it's not far from reaching Kiev either. Well, really, what's the task right now? By the way, that's a very interesting conclusion. Interesting. So Zelensky with his government, he's pushing people to the edge. That's the scariest part of this whole story. We were talking about the referendum like that, but maybe we misunderstood each other a little bit. In what way? I'm not talking about the referendum as a legal procedure, you know? I mean, not as an act or a process. No, no, no. I'm talking about the referendum as about people. I mean, people can be driven to such despair, to such a collapse of the system. They can lose faith in the state to such an extent.
You mean that people aren't being asked, that no one is really asking people for their opinion?
They're not being asked. But people might say, to hell with it, let there at least be some kind of order, you know? And I know people like that personally. Well, over these, 10 years? Yeah, many have come to this. That it's chaos, businesses were seized, people were traded for money, for real estate, factories were taken away, raided, and they say, guys, well, you know, sorry, but many are already disappointed in Ukraine as a system, as a state, you understand? And they say, yeah, damn it, let it be better. Over there, even though it's not perfect either. No one says it's all sweet there. They have their own rules, their own hierarchy. But at least, more or less, things are clear. Like the hierarchy is clear. You know who to pay off and how to live. You understand? And I just imagine, here we are discussing this collapse over and over. But people really need to realize that this horror isn't happening because Yeliseevich and Shelest want to sit around and talk about it on the internet. But this leads, this state disease leads to death. That's why we emphasize it and people lose all faith. I wanted to ask you about post-war history. I'm interested in your opinion. Look, there's talk today that the United States of America will be conducting filtration. Well, I'm saying this half-jokingly, like in Sheremetyevo, there's filtration for Ukrainians, right? They go through your phones, dig up all your data, all that stuff. Social networks, you know? Trump said in his speech, for crying out loud, why aren't we getting some Swedes, decent people? Instead, we're taking in all sorts of people, some migrants from places like Somalia. It's terrible. We're gathering all the riffraff here. Decent people, join us and provide real countries with some normal citizens. That's just Trump speaking emotionally from the heart. And then came the announcement that, let's say, the United States will be checking social networks, phones, travel history, and background for the past 5 years. It will be interesting to see who enters their country. This also applies to regular tourists with visas who wish to visit. Actually, you can laugh about it. You can call it global conspiracy theories. But we're coming to a point where countries and systems will really, well, that's the kind of future we're looking at. This filtering occurred between Russia and Ukraine for obvious reasons. There's a war. But essentially, this is a global trend. It's being set. And when countries cancel visas, it's supposed to be something good. It means, well, they're friendly countries. So Trump is setting a new precedent. But after the war in Ukraine, Bangladeshis, Indians, anyone, because there's a shortage of workers. So in Ukraine, to fulfill all these plans and points of reconstruction, they'll let in anyone.
It depends on who wins and which forces prevail. If the globalists stay in control, it will be as you said. Let's be honest about how this appears. Many men have been killed, others have died, and many more have become disillusioned and left. But at the same time, they're bringing God knows who into Ukraine. You know, the European Union allowed several countries not to take in migrants, 4 or 5 countries. Hungary pays €1 million in fines every day because they're being forced. Orban refused. That's why I'm against the European Union and such decisions. I fully support the trend Elon Musk is setting.
The Fourth Reich.
That might be too harsh, but reformatting is needed. The power of bureaucrats should already be a thing of the past. These Ursulas, who are chosen by a handful of bureaucrats and not the actual residents of the European Union.
I'm very familiar with Trump and deeply into the topic.
Actually, it's just common sense. Just common sense. Like some kind of miracle is sitting in Ukraine right now. with my last words. I went in yesterday. I posted a comment from Forbes Ukraine on my Telegram channel. You'd think a respected... a franchise, Forbes. And there, it's all about insulting Trump. You're in America, but there's no democracy here. Go ahead and hold elections. Idiots like that shouldn't be allowed into the United States of America. Why are they here? If you're against the capitalist system, if you're against democracy, why the hell do we need you here? This country, like all of Western civilization, was founded on a different ideology. What is Europe doing now? No one knows what's going on. Anyone can join in, and now police, especially in Germany and Britain, are cracking down over internet posts. Hate speech isn't allowed. God forbid you criticize Ursula or the bureaucrats. So what does this mean? So this is Putin's Russia. For me, this is the same as what Putin's Russia does. On one hand, they're against Putin, but on the other hand, they're already acting like him. They decide how elections should be held in other countries. They censor citizens. The former Twitter under Elon Musk faces a 140 million fine. The European Union previously offered Musk a deal. Allow quiet censorship and avoid fines, but Musk made the offer public. What is this? Are these Western values? Trump opposes it. And that's the main obstacle now. Guys, you've strayed from our basic values, the ones we were built on. Mertz said today that we have no issues with democracy.
We'll show we won and that this is great.
Yes, yes.
This is a great migrant policy. You could also call a Somali or Ukrainian a piece of trash.
I don't want to call anyone a piece of trash, but there are some statistics. There are some statistics about who commits terrorist attacks in the world, for example. It's just a matter of statistics. What religion are these people? I'm for all religions when it's peaceful and a person is focused on spirituality, not when their brain is being washed. That's just common sense. And of course, America had to do it. Do you think not many of them have come here? They hate everything this was built on and have spread it to the youth. That's what this globalist policy is about. We've discussed this with you as well. There's a teenager standing there wearing $200 Nike sneakers, holding a $1,500 iPhone. His parents have an amazing apartment in a great building. He goes to a private school, and yet he sits there criticizing capitalism on social media. Well, that's just absurd.
The issue, you see, is once again about values.
Yes, yes.
But does someone consent to being counted in statistics? Because of some jerks, perfectly decent people of different nationalities suffer. This is very relevant now for Ukrainians abroad.
Well, why do they suffer? For example, in America, there are Ukrainians like me and others who attend rallies, demanding the war continue while they enjoy life in America.
Yes. Yes.
Who is suffering for whom? But that doesn't seem to be true.
Tell me, I wanted to ask, so that basically, so the broadcast continues and I don't forget. Why is everyone criticizing China? Today it's Zelensky. Yesterday or the day before, Leshchenko. Probably the day before yesterday, yes, when he was reading out answers to questions over the phone. Again, he says China is to blame. China is to blame for the war not ending in Ukraine. Well, that's something. Why?
Yeah, that's some kind of new point in the manual. I think it's also part of the anti-crisis strategy, some kind of lightning rod. Trump and Xi had a very specific conversation about Ukraine, and this plan was born, including after talks with China. Maybe even coordinated, I'd say. I was shocked when I heard this. Now, they blame China every day. It's clear Russia is China's proxy. I already said this. But why did this story start today during peace talks and not a month, 2 months, a year or two ago, or at the war's start? I don't understand and lack a clear answer.
They're saying Starmer, Macron and Mertz spoke with Trump after meeting Zelensky. It's funny, of course. It is reported that the leaders discussed the latest news regarding peace negotiations. A Downing Street spokesperson added that intensive work on the peace plan will continue in the coming days. But we take this brick. This is when yesterday he was in Italy and briefly in Brussels. The day before at that meeting when Larry the cat ran away, and now they're telling us this story. So it turns out this is a real problem. Listen, and with Europe too, for Zelensky. Trump talked with those 3 European strongmen, and then he came out and said, okay, you don't have democracy, Zelensky, go run for elections. So you see how they talk about him behind his back, especially when Trump, the big boss, is around. Oh, that's an interesting detail.
Of course, that's how it is.
Yeah, they'll sell him out for cheap. Vladimir Alexandrovich. So let's imagine the elections are scheduled. Would you re-elect Zelensky? 3%. There's nowhere else to go. There just won't be anyone else. 8% definitely, he's our guy. Well, I suppose it's unlikely that people there...
3-3.
Well, they just like the word potozhny, you know. Yeah, potashny. 8% or 36%, it's all a farce. I wouldn't go to such elections because, well, the way they started, if they appoint them, in general, you shouldn't go there. And by the way, I've noticed there's a big trend, especially among the older generation. They say, to hell with it, both among the youth who are 18 and can vote, and among the older generation. Ignore them. People simply don't want to vote. Well, and 53%, anyone but him. That's how it is. Who would Yeliseevich choose in the anyone but him option, among those 53%?
Well, myself, but I'm not running. Someone who shares my libertarian capitalist ideology.
Yes, friends, let's move on to questions, just a few. So, thank you all very much for leaving these questions. Let's go. Good afternoon, Alexander and Dennis. Question. If it benefits Trump to stop the war now, then why doesn't he reveal all the compromising material on Zelensky? Or does he not have any? Respectfully, Alexei.
There is compromising material. I've answered this before. If you act drastically, you need a highly rated replacement ready, not just anyone, to prevent Poroshenko and the globalists from seizing power. The situation is more complex than it appears, which is why his power is being removed gradually. I repeat this to you word for word every broadcast, and as we can see from one broadcast to the next, that's exactly how it happens.
So that means 2 questions from Anna. Almost the entire audience from Russia considers you a Russophobe. Why do you need that? And the second question, if Trump strikes Venezuela, will that be different? Well, I mean in terms of a special military operation by America in Venezuela.
Yes, that would be different, because Trump is not planning to bomb Venezuela or its civilians, or to annex anything. If Trump does bomb, he will bomb Maduro's regime and infrastructure connected to Maduro and the drug cartels, not civilians. To take revenge for something and to take something away from someone. Second, I'm not a Russophobe. I'm just someone who calls things by their names. Russians insult me in the comments, they spread hatred. Isn't that enough hatred for them? Well, think about where this came from. That's part of it. This is a two-sided story.
There's a lot of hatred right now, and...
Well, on the contrary, I don't want to. You see, I don't touch on this topic.
And look...
People need to be united.
And look, even within the so-called, well, Russian, I'm not saying ethnic Russians, but different Russian groups, and within different Ukrainian groups, there's hatred toward each other. They're tearing each other apart. Honestly, I was shocked. They reported that there was supposedly a trial for Max Nazarov, remember?
Yeah.
So now they've gathered, finished the investigation and the trial. Listen, I went and read the comments on Facebook. I'm shocked. Everyone is speaking pure Ukrainian there, saying things like, hang him, he deserves it. Jeez, guys. Well, I mean, he kept a low profile, yeah. I mean, it seems like he got out on bail, but again, it's all very unclear because there's no verified information, so it's absolutely... And his partner, Gelia Pichik, Angelina Pichik, she used to be a host. What is she doing? She just walks around Kyiv making little interviews for TikTok. So Detector Media, all those Soros people together with those professional Ukrainians are dragging her through the mud. She goes to some media, tries to defend herself, tries to rehabilitate her image, but it doesn't matter. That's how it is. There's just so much pointless anger. It's not even clear why. And we're like a reflection of each other here. It's the same over there too. Well, of course, that's a bit of a far-fetched example with Larisa Dolina. And with all those situations, for example, there are also their own topics and triggers. And they keep chewing on this. And all of it just breeds anger. Teaching people to be angry is really bad. And of course, all of this overlaps with the topic of war.
I don't want to talk about Russia, Sasha. I just need to say this. All of this is created by the state. It encourages it and gives it a license because it's beneficial for the state when we fight among ourselves. And there, the Medici and the Ermakis will be taking out 100 million each. In short, your enemies, the Ukilianti, are enemies. We declare enemies, just don't interfere. People miss that the real enemy is the authorities, not each other.
A question for Dennis. Do you agree that people who support Zelensky keep supporting him because otherwise their whole worldview built over years would collapse and it's easier to live without looking up? If yes, does Dennis notice something similar in himself? Maybe not towards Trump, but for example towards Milei? Thank you. I personally respect both of them very much, just so you know. So, do you notice such things in yourself? Where does this come from?
So regarding Zelensky, first of all, I just agree. I don't have that because I'm not attached to personalities. I'm attached to the ideology that I've come to in my life. There are people in the world today who embody this ideology and lead Miley Musk, Trump. I support them. If someone else appears tomorrow or if I reach that level, then that's how it will be. My supporters back the ideology I represent in Ukraine today, not me personally. There are no libertarians in Ukraine today except for me, whom people follow.
Alina Vostroilova. Question. Is it beneficial for Trump to stop the war now, so that it doesn't figuratively reach the taking of Berlin, and so that he and his coalition of participants don't end up in the status of losers? Well, I mean, that's an interesting turn of events. By the way, I often hear that Trump is simply saving the skin of this so-called West, because as a hegemon, he feels responsible for the West. And Europe is dragging it down. Europe doesn't let this happen, doesn't let them, so to speak, inflate this life boy.
But that wasn't the question, Sasha. The question was from a Russian person who is obsessed with greatness. He believes they can drive someone straight to Berlin. But why hasn't Putin taken a single regional center in 4 years? I'm not on the front lines and don't know everything, but still. Let him answer for himself. What Berlin is he talking about? He used massive forces and lost many people and equipment. What Berlin? A few thousand tomahawks could wipe it out before anything began. But really, why does a person sit and create inside himself the very thing we're trying to drive out of here right now? This hatred toward Europe. The Soviet Union would have starved to death without American lend-lease and wouldn't have defeated Hitler. And in the 90s, it would have died without America's help.
Without Bush's chicken legs.
That's right, without Bush's chicken legs. Why are you sitting there and spraying this around, people? Enjoy your country if you love it so much. Why do you hate? I can't understand. Is someone taking something away from you after all? No.
No, look, it's like you attack the person asking the question, for example, but the point is simple. After all, we touched on this today as well. The point is the collapse of the system. You see, it can fall apart suddenly and all at once. And this taking of Berlin, it's not that there will be, at least that's how I understood it. Maybe the person meant something different. It's not in the sense that they'll be raising a flag on the Reichstag, that they'll get that far. But that everything could collapse so quickly, you see, that there won't even be a need for all those forces and all of that. Well, we've already been fighting for almost 4 years.
No, that won't happen. A person probably still dreams about it. I'll keep attacking the one asking the question, but that won't happen. The European Union and NATO remain separate organizations. Though they are somewhat connected, Europe is facing a reformatting the European Union. You shouldn't confuse Europe and the European Union at all. Europe is great, but this is just a bunch of bureaucrats. That won't happen all at once. The structure is too big.
Chat broadcast. Question. You said that we should vote for ideas, not for good looks. Who actually has ideas now and not just slogans, populism, and a pragmatic program? Thank you.
Good question. Those not listed in today's polls have them. You'll meet these people during the campaign and be surprised.
Here it says, please tell Sasha Dennis that the question is from Kiev. This is from a woman from Kiev. It's in the chat. She made it clear, no?
I believe you, I believe you.
Well, I don't know, kind of. So, do you think the United States will leave NATO? After all, Trump already hinted at this about 6 months ago, and now there are already signals coming from Congress. Do you think Europe and NATO could even survive without the United States?
Europe and NATO won't survive without the United States, and the United States won't leave NATO. I know that for sure. What's happening in Congress right now, it draws Europe's attention as a whole, that you need to think a little, sit down and think. Trump understands the global security system very well, and he knows who Russia is and who China is. It's just that our press made him out to be some kind of fool who doesn't understand anything, but he actually understands things very well.
Alexei, question. Under Poroshenko, the concept of the Kremlin's hand and mouthpiece appeared. But why did no one notice the hand of the West? Why does no one notice the blatant colonization of Ukraine?
There is no colonization at all. If there were colonization of Ukraine, Ukraine would be a successful country today. That's not the case. What we have is Soros's people. There is the United States Agency for International Development, which conducted experiments on Ukraine, made money, and gained influence, including earning profits. It was a tool for gaining influence and getting into our state enterprises. People like Leshchenko, Nayem, and others like them. So that's all that's happening. Poroshenko uses the Kremlin hand tactic, but it's true there are and always have been Kremlin agents in politics, and there likely always will be, unfortunately.
If Kolomoisky, let's say, runs for president, then people will go and vote for him. I have no doubt that people haven't learned any lessons, writes Olha.
Poroshenko, was Poroshenko there?
Kolomoisky.
Kolomoisky. No, this story isn't for him.
So that means... So they're also pitting Orban against Yeliseevich there. So here's the question. How is Alexei different from Kiva and Buzina from their supposedly objective position? What's Razgulya? I don't get it.
Who is Alexei?
I don't know who Alexei is. Maybe you have the wrong place or wrote about the wrong thing. Okay. Okay. Here's a question for you, Siri. So, is it allowed to bomb a regime? I mean, you can't bomb countries, but you can bomb a regime. How do you bomb a regime without bombing the country? This is about Venezuela.
Yes, I understand. Bombing a country is what Putin does.
And does Trump do it differently?
Trump doesn't do anything like that.
How did he act in Iran?
Wait, we're discussing Venezuela. What happened in Iran?
What happened? Wasn't Iran bombed?
There was. Not much.
There you go.
Not much. The regime must fall, and it will. Wait, there have always been cannibals, including those who shaped today's world. Now you're comparing democratic countries to cannibalistic ones. There's a country sitting there, and its ideology is to destroy another country, Israel. And we're discussing this on the same level as Germany. Yes, is that how it turns out? Or Venezuela, where there's a weirdo, and people are just dying of hunger. The country has the largest oil reserves. Drug cartels are out of control. Yeah, so is this what you call democracy? So let's just let them thrive. And these people, Sash, let me say this. Aren't they afraid to support people like Maduro, like Iran? Aren't they afraid to live and realize, I support those whose people are starving to death even though they have oil reserves. I support those who behead women if they wear makeup, who stone them to death. Here I am, sitting and supporting this. No, don't touch them. How do these people live?
No, look, there's a rule here that he was chosen by the people.
Who, Maduro?
Maduro.
And did the people also choose the last election? It was pure fraud. Maria Machado won. She was kidnapped. Some other guy actually ran there. Maduro won fair and square, right? Well, then no questions,
No, but wait, there was an election, right?
If we're being honest, was there a referendum in Crimea? Yes, but it was forced. Were there elections? Yes, but they were falsified. Only Putin and China recognize it.
China already plays a major role in today's world.
Of course, it's quite a lot, but there are clearly 5 dictatorial...
And China has very serious interests in Venezuela, which don't let Trump, act freely. He understands the risks, weighs everything. That's why, you see, we're bombing boats, but we still haven't launched an operation there.
The process isn't finished. Maduro was offered money to leave, but Maduro demanded to stay in power for another year and a half. That was the sticking point. He was offered $200 million, but he also demanded amnesty for 100 people from his inner circle. And these negotiations are ongoing.
Are there talks with Zelensky?
No, 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 no. I knew you were going to ask that. No, no, that's not going to happen. That's a completely different story, and everything is different, and my personal perception is different too. Zelensky isn't respected, and that's his own doing. If he acted properly, we'd both support him, but with his current behavior, I don't want my country destroyed.
Then why... Well, isn't the war being fought not against the regime in Ukraine?
Which war, Putin's?
Yes, it's Putin's war, but not against the regime.
There was no regime during the attack. Zelensky showed dictatorial tendencies and was a president nearly 2 months from being overthrown. But ask Putin, why was it necessary to bomb civilians? Why attack the country? Why was it... Did Medvedchuk steal money? That's their issue. Why didn't he act politically the way he basically did all these years? Like political parties, television channels, pouring in money, using influence. That's terrible, but at least it's civilized. Bombing destroys lives, causes grief, and takes away property and hope. Why did this have to be done? That's my question.
Friends, write in the comments what you think. Denis Yeliseevich was my guest today. Thank you for your time and thoughts.
Thank you.
Friends, thank you for watching this video. Share your thoughts on what you think. Denis Yeliseevich is listed as a YouTube user. Also, don't forget to like this video. Wishing you kindness and light. See you soon.